This week on Wax Carving Wednesday, I am going to carve a bangle, a hinged bangle. But before I do, I thought I would just show you last week's piece. So I'll just zoom in a little bit here for you. So this is ready to go to the casters now, and I've just made everything nice and crisp and clean, and it's good to go. So this is for the bangle, and what I'm going to do first, I've actually done a couple things ahead of time. I know the measurements that I need to make for this bangle, and to that end I've made this little template, and before I can use it, you can see I've cut these to the width that I need for the bangle. However, I can't really use these with it so rough, so I'm going to start by filing it a bit smoother. And this is just so that I can see a little bit easier what I'm doing. Plus it gives me a flat surface to start with. I don't think I'm going to get this done in one sitting. So you can see these spots here where it's a little bit still got to go. That means that the wax isn't parallel and flat, which I need it to be before I start carving. You can see how this area is starting to disappear. This is the lowest area, so it's going to take a little more oomph. And for now, I'm only going to do one side. I should get my file card out, I suppose. Always a good idea to keep your files clean. As you go, they do cut better, and the wax does gum them up. Now this week I'm using green wax as opposed to purple. Green wax is usually used for getting more detail. I find that the purple is the one that is kind of my go-to. However, I couldn't find any thick enough sheet. It's already been cut down to thinner pieces for other projects, so I decided I better use green because this is what I had on hand. There's also blue wax. I find it to be the worst for me to carve into. Now I am going to be doing a little the template when it goes on here is going to cover only part of it, so I don't have to go crazy with this and get the whole thing right down. I just have to have my working area perfectly flat. Almost there. I'm just going to check. You can see it's a little bit tapered down from this side to this side. Same thing on this side, so I have to remove a bit more material here. So I'm going to focus just a little bit on this side. So that when I go back to doing the full length, there we go, almost there, just one last little spot right there. And you'll notice that I'm turning it this way and this way while I'm filing it. That's going to help keep it parallel. Generally, because I'm right-handed and the way I move my hands, I put a little bit more pressure on one side than the other. Angle of the file and all of that matters, so I turn it around and make sure. There we go. So there we go. So you can see now that it's nice and flat, and that's a good start point. So this shape is the interior dimension of the bangle, and I have already set up the width of the piece. So I'm going to start by drawing a line on here, and I'm going to try to keep it, I'm going to push it all the way to one end so that I don't waste wax. So I'm just using a scriber now to draw a little layout line. So this is just the interior of the bangle. So you can see there's the interior, and I'll use the same template for the other side when I get there. So I'm going to now take and remove that material in the middle. And as I've mentioned before in other videos, I don't use spiral blades. I don't use skip tooth. I use coping saw blades because they cut straight and they are sturdy. So I'm going to make sure that I cut this way, no parallels. I can cut a little off, but I don't want to be too much. So I'm going to have my blade a slight angle so that this side is true and the other side is a little off. You can see it cuts quite nicely. And I'm cutting through a ½ an inch here. Which is pretty significant. Always leave a little bit of room for the so that I can cut final to the line. So you can see, I don't know, can you see that it's a little bit bigger on this side than this side. So now I'm going to go in with a rotary file and I'm going to parallel it. Just have to get my rotary file out. Important that you use a rotary file that is at least as deep as your material, so you can see how I'm going to be able to cut the whole thing at once. So I'm just watching my layout line and bringing it to that line. All the way. Now, making a flat space with a round tool is difficult, so I'm going to go in, make sure that this is nice and flat. And parallel. Now I'm just going to get rid of those little notches that I created here. There we go. Now that I have that, this is my basic layout, so it's going to go on her wrist like this. Now remember, there's room for a hinge and all of that other stuff. This is the thickness of the bracelet, and this particular bracelet is going to be solid, excluding this area right here where the clasp will be. You can see how I didn't flatten this side. I'll do that after. And you can see how much more difficult it is to see my layout lines on the side that I didn't smooth. I'm putting it on both sides this time so that I have a line to work to. And again, I'm going to take my saw frame and I'm going to remove the extra wax. Just in case anybody's wondering, I'll be at Local Pieces, downtown Fergus, tomorrow evening for the Sip and Shop. I'll be there on Friday as well. Again, I'm angling my blade so that on the back I'm quite far away from the line, and that's really just a safety precaution. As I cut, I'm blowing the wax away from my cut line. Just so I can see. There we go. So now this is basically it. And you can see this thickness compared to this, it's much thicker, and you can see my line there. I'm going to bring it down to that. Before I use a hand file though, I'm going to rough it in just a little bit with the rotary file. And the only reason why I do this is because it's faster, which is a big deal for these videos. So and I'm going to do all the way around. Okay, so I have smoothed that out with the rotary file, but I've done it still on that angle. You can see there's still quite a bit of material here that has to be removed. Now I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same thing from the other side. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me a high point in the middle, and then that's what I'll file off by hand. Again, I'm blowing the extra wax away so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to continue the rest of this side here. It's very important that you keep your tool moving, especially when you're using a radius tool on a flat surface. So I haven't gone all the way to the line. Now I can see down the middle here, and you probably can't see on the camera, but there's a little hump. And I could take that off the rotary file, but it's pretty dangerous. So I'm going to choose to just use a regular hand file for this. And you can see how the middle is getting smooth. And even though this takes longer, it's going to give me a better product in the end. And again, I turn it around so that if I am putting more pressure on one side than another, I can... some people will use wax files, actual wax files for this. I find that they just remove too much material too quickly, and they don't do a better job because they tend to be narrow like this one, and having a wider file allows me to go across the entire wax at once, which is good. Now you can see I'm at the edge here and it's getting close. And what I'm looking for, and I don't know if you can see it in here, is if I reflect the light just right, I can still see some of the roughness from the other file in the other direction. Now I don't have to get it all the way down to the edge. I just have to get it to the line. And the reason I don't have to get it so there's a little bit of unevenness at the edge is because I actually have to half round this anyways. So when I half round it, that edge won't be there, so I don't have to be too particular. In this case, by the time I get down to that line, it's going to be good. Now I can see there's a little bit of line here, so I got to focus on that edge just a bit more. It's good. It's good. Now I'm going to do the curvature. So whenever you're carving or filing along the curve, it's important that you curve your piece. Now one thing, I'm not going to put this on my bench peg because if I do, I'm going to ruin that inside edge and I need it not to be ruined. So I'm going to put it on my finger just like this. And again, I'm watching the facet that I'm creating. So that I know that I'm running parallel. Just like that. I want to check, make sure this rectangle is even. And right now it's still a little bit high in the middle. If this rectangle isn't perfectly rectangular, then I'm off kilter, but it looks pretty good. I'm going to do the other side now. Again, it's a curve, so I'm curving my file around the form as I go. I'm checking my line. This side is right on. This side still has a little bit of go, so it means I got to take a little off this side and flatten that facet all the way across so it's one uniform piece. Check the end, make sure it's rectangular. It's a little off of this corner here. There we go. So that's my basis. Now, before I go any further, I'm just going to as quickly as I can, I'm just going to sand this guy down so that I can use that side to lay this side out, because they need to be exactly the same. And even if I use my template, there's probably a little bit of variation from that in my template. So I need both sides of the bracelet to be the same, not to be matching the template. The template was so that I could rough it in properly. So again, I like to be able to see my scribe lines. So by smoothing this out first, increases my ability to see what I'm doing, which is important. And there's a little bit there, but I think it's okay. So now I'm going to take this one here, I'm going to set it up just like I did before with a template, but this time I'm going to use this wax model as a template. And so I'm just going to scribe around the inside, holding it very tightly so it doesn't move. Scribe around the outside. And then I have my scribe line on here, and I'll cut that out and do exactly what I did here. So that's all I'm going to do for this week. Next week, I'm going to file this edge into that form, and if I might hollow out the end a little bit to accommodate the clasp. Okay, I hope this was informative, and we'll see you next week.